When discussing famous mysterious cases, the story of Room 1046 at the President Hotel is often mentioned for its strangeness and numerous unexplained mysteries. The unknown identity of the victim and his unusual death in this case have created a veil obscuring the answer to the lingering question: what happened to Owen in Room 1046? On January 2, 1935, a man checked into the President Hotel in Kansas City, Missouri. According to the receptionist, the man appeared in the early afternoon. Around 1:20 p.m., he was a young man with a frightening appearance due to a large scar on the left side of his head. He introduced himself as Roland T. Owen from Los Angeles. The hotel's bellboy, Randolph Probst, escorted Roland to his room after he completed the check-in procedures. Upon entering Room 1046, Randolph noticed that the only things Owen brought with him were a comb, a toothbrush, and toothpaste. Shortly afterward, maid Mary Soptic knocked on the door to start her cleaning duties. Mary noticed that the room was very dark because Owen had drawn all the curtains and only left a small bedside lamp on. At 4 p.m., Mary returned to Room 1046 to deliver fresh towels. After knocking and not hearing an answer, she let herself in, assuming the guest was out. Contrary to her belief, Owen was sleeping on the bed in the dark room. After quickly finishing her task, she left the room. The following morning, around 10:30, Mary Soptic went to Room 1046 and found the door locked. After knocking and receiving no response, she used her key to enter, thinking Owen was away. She was startled to find the man sitting on the bed, angrily talking on the phone. Mary overheard Owen say, "No, don't. I don't want to eat. I'm not hungry. I just had breakfast." Though the call was brief, Mary sensed tension in his voice. Uncomfortable with being in the room with Owen, she quickly retrieved the towels and left. At 4 p.m., she returned to the room once more to deliver fresh towels. This time, she heard another man's voice inside with Owen. After knocking and announcing that she had fresh towels, a gruff voice told her they had enough towels and didn't need more. Even though Mary knew she had removed all the towels earlier that morning, she gently left, not wanting to intrude on the two men's privacy. The next morning, the hotel manager received a call from the switchboard operator reporting that the phone in Room 1046 had been off the hook for a long time without being used. Bellboy Randolph was sent to the room and found the door locked with a "Do Not Disturb" sign hanging on the doorknob. Randolph knocked and Owen told him to come in, turn on the light. However, when Randolph explained that the door was locked, he received no response. He then loudly told Owen to hang up the phone before leaving, assuming he was simply drunk and had knocked it off the hook. About an hour later, the switchboard operator called again, reporting that the phone in Room 1046 was still off the hook. This time, Randolph used the master key to enter Owen's room and found him lying face down on the bed, appearing drunk. Not wanting to argue with the guest, Randolph put the phone back on the receiver, locked the door, and left to report to his manager. Less than an hour later, the hotel was notified again that the phone in Room 1046 was once again off the hook. This time, when Randolph opened the door, he discovered Owen curled up in a corner of the room, covered in stab wounds. Default text: hotel manager immediately called the police, and although seriously injured, Owen could still answer investigators' questions when they arrived at the scene. When asked who caused his injuries, Owen claimed, "Nobody," explaining he had fallen and hit his head on the bathtub. When asked if he had attempted suicide, Owen shook his head and then passed out. After Owen was taken to the hospital, authorities returned to the room to examine the scene and were surprised to find that all of Owen's belongings had disappeared. Dr. Flanders noted that the bloodstains on the wall had dried long ago, suggesting that the incident might have occurred between 3 and 4 a.m. Owen's hands, feet, and neck had been tied with some kind of cord, and his chest had multiple stab wounds causing severe lung damage. A cigarette butt, a hairpin, and a bobby pin were the only items found in the room. The glass of the phone cradle bore 4 small fingerprints, which police believed belonged to a woman. At the hospital, Owen did not regain consciousness since arriving at the emergency room that morning. Precisely at midnight, the unfortunate man passed away, leaving only questions about the mysterious circumstances surrounding his death. After Owen's death in room 1046, the police tried various methods to determine his identity. Remembering that he had claimed to be from Los Angeles, authorities there searched for a man named Roland T. Owen with a similar description, but found nothing. In other words, the name Roland T. Owen probably didn't exist, and the information about his name and address he provided to the hotel was false. Unable to determine the man's identity, the police turned their investigation to Doan, who was supposedly in the room with Owen when Mary knocked on the door. However, a single name was insufficient to find someone in a city of tens of thousands, leading to a dead end. Since Owen's next of kin couldn't be determined, authorities decided to bury his body at Memorial Park Cemetery without a ceremony. An unusual event occurred when an anonymous caller offered to cover the entire cost of a proper funeral for Owen on March 23rd. About 3 months after the incident, $25, equivalent to $500 today, was sent to the funeral home where the body was being kept, along with a card that read, "Love forever, Louise." These peculiar events only added to the mystery behind Owen's true identity. The lack of any solid clues led the case to fade into obscurity. Then, in November 1936, a woman living in Alabama contacted the Kansas City police after reading about the Room 1046 murder case that had occurred over a year earlier. The woman, Ruby Ogletree, claimed that the victim in the case was actually her son, Artemis Ogletree. When asked why she hadn't reported her son missing for such a long time, Ruby explained that she had still been receiving letters from Artemis in 1935. However, she also noticed something strange about the letters. They used a lot of slang and weren't handwritten but typed. In August 1935, she received a call from a man claiming to be her son's best friend, introducing himself as Jordan. He told Ruby many stories about his trip with Artemis, including that Artemis had lost his thumb in a bar fight to save Jordan, which made him unable to write and forced him to use a typewriter. However, when Ruby started asking detailed questions about the story, he quickly hung up. Given her accurate description of the victim's identifying details, the police believed the true identity of Roland T. Owen was indeed Artemis Ogletree, Ruby Ogletree's 17-year-old son. After confirming the victim's true identity, the headstone at Memorial Park was changed to reflect Artemis's real name. After a year and a half of searching for new leads with no success, the police gave up, and the case gradually faded into history. Many theories have been proposed to explain Artemis's mysterious death, including the involvement of the Kansas City Mafia, leading to a mysterious assailant killing him on the night of January 3rd. However, the most widely accepted theory is that of a love triangle involving Artemis, a woman, and another man, possibly named Doan. This theory suggests that although Artemis was engaged, he had an inappropriate relationship with his same-sex lover. Evidence supporting this theory comes from several newspaper reports about the case in the following years. The Newcastle Sun mentioned the case in an article titled "The Mysterious Murder in Room 1046, in which the author reported a call from an anonymous woman to the local newspaper to clarify the victim's burial information. When asked about her relationship with the victim and whether she knew anything about what had happened in the case, the woman replied, "You got it wrong," and hung up. Around the same time, an anonymous man called the city's funeral home and said, "You got it wrong. Artemis Ogletree didn't die because he was a victim." In a call to the city's largest flower shop around this time, the phrase, "my sister," was again mentioned in the conversation. According to the article, when asked if the caller knew anything about Artemis's death, the man replied, "You got it wrong," and hung up. All these elements have led many to believe that Artemis broke off his engagement to a woman due to his homosexual lover. Doan, who may have been in the room when Mary knocked on the door on January 3rd. This angered the woman's family, leading to the tragic outcome for Artemis. However, whether all this actually happened remains unverified, and it is still considered just a theory based on unsubstantiated evidence. Given that the case occurred so long ago, finding the true reason for Artemis's fate has become nearly impossible. To this day, one question remains unanswered. What happened to Artemis in room 1046?